You know that moment when your entire world crumbles in 17 seconds? When everything you've built, every line of code you've written, every late night you've sacrificed disappears with the press of a button. That's exactly what happened to Meridian Technologies on a rainy Tuesday in March. And I was the one holding the delete key. My name is Sarah Mitchell, and I was the senior systems architect at Meridian Technologies for 6 years. 6 years of my life poured into building the most sophisticated financial management system the company had ever seen. 6 years of being told I was indispensable, that I was the backbone of their entire operation, until the day they decided I wasn't. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me start from the beginning, because this story isn't just about revenge. It's about betrayal, corporate greed, and what happens when you push the wrong person too far. It was a typical Monday morning in February when I first noticed something was off. I arrived at the Meridian Technologies headquarters at 7:30 a.m., my usual time, clutching my oversized coffee mug that read, "World's Okayest Programmer," a gag gift from my team that had somehow become my lucky charm. The building was still mostly empty, just the way I liked it. Those early morning hours were my sanctuary, when I could dive deep into code without interruptions, when the system was mine and mine alone. I badged into the 20th floor, where the IT department lived in a maze of cubicles and glass-walled conference rooms. The familiar hum of servers and the soft clicking of keyboards greeted me like an old friend. This place had been my second home for so long that I knew every sound, every smell, every quirk of the building's temperament. But as I settled into my desk and fired up my workstation, something felt different. There were whispers coming from the corner office, hushed conversations that stopped abruptly when I walked by, meaningful glances exchanged between managers who normally barely acknowledged each other. The kind of corporate secrecy that usually meant layoffs or restructuring. I tried to shake off the feeling and focus on my current project. For the past 3 months, I'd been working on what I privately called Project Phoenix, a complete overhaul of Meridian's legacy financial system. The old system was a dinosaur, built on outdated architecture that was costing the company millions in inefficiencies. My new system would streamline everything from payroll to expense reporting, from budget allocation to financial forecasting. The numbers were staggering. My analysis showed that the new system would save Meridian approximately $2.1 million annually in reduced processing time, eliminated redundancies, and decreased error rates. It was the kind of project that should have earned me a promotion, a raise, maybe even a corner office of my own. Instead, it became the reason they fired me. The first red flag appeared during my weekly check-in with Marcus Blackwood, the Chief Technology Officer. Marcus was a tall, imposing man in his 50s who wore expensive suits and had a habit of talking over people in meetings. He'd been at Meridian for 15 years, climbing the corporate ladder through a combination of political savvy and taking credit for other people's work. "Sarah," he said, not looking up from his phone as I entered his office. "How's the financial system project coming along?" "Ahead of schedule, actually," I replied, unable to keep the pride out of my voice. "I've completed the core architecture and most of the integration modules. We're looking at a potential go-live date of next month, assuming the testing phase goes smoothly." That's when he finally looked up, and I saw something in his eyes that made my stomach drop. It wasn't the satisfaction I expected, or even mild approval. It was something colder, something calculating. "That's impressive," he said slowly. "And you've been working on this project alone?" "Mostly, yes. I've had some support from the junior developers for testing and documentation, but the core architecture and programming has been my work." Marcus nodded, making notes on a legal pad. "And all the system documentation, the code repositories, the technical specifications. Those are all stored on your local drives and our internal servers." The question struck me as odd. Of course, everything was properly documented and stored according to company protocol. I was nothing if not thorough. "Yes, all properly archived and backed up according to our data management policies. Why do you ask?" "Just making sure we're following proper procedures," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Corporate compliance, you know how it is." I left that meeting with an uneasy feeling in my gut. Marcus had never shown much interest in the technical details of my projects before. He was more of a big-picture guy, focused on budgets and timelines rather than the actual mechanics of software development. His sudden interest in documentation and storage protocols felt like someone checking to make sure all the pieces were in place for something. The next few days passed in a blur of coding and testing. I was in the zone, that magical state where the world disappears and there's nothing but you and the computer, solving problems and building something beautiful. The new financial system was my masterpiece. It was elegant, efficient, and powerful. Every line of code was optimized. Every function was perfectly integrated with the others. I remember working late that Thursday night, putting the finishing touches on the user interface. The office was empty except for the cleaning crew, and I had my headphones on, lost in the rhythm of typing. The system was almost complete, just a few more modules to integrate and some final testing to conduct. As I worked, I couldn't help but imagine the presentation I'd give to the executive team. I'd walk them through the features, show them the cost savings analysis, demonstrate how the new system would revolutionize their financial operations. Maybe they'd finally see me as more than just a programmer. Maybe they'd recognize that I wasn't just maintaining their systems, I was transforming their entire business. Friday morning brought the team meeting that would change everything. I walked into conference room B at 9 a.m. sharp, carrying my laptop and a folder full of project documentation. The entire IT leadership team was there: Marcus Blackwood, Janet Walsh from Project Management, David Kim from Database Administration, and surprisingly, two people I didn't recognize, a man and woman in expensive suits who had the unmistakable look of consultants. "Sarah, thanks for joining us," Marcus said, gesturing to an empty chair. "I'd like you to meet Amanda Foster and James Harrison from Techno Solutions Group. They're here to discuss the financial system project." I shook hands with both consultants, noting their firm grips and confident smiles. Techno Solutions Group was a well-known consulting firm that specialized in enterprise software implementations. But why were they here discussing my project? "Ms. Mitchell," Amanda Foster began, opening a leather portfolio. "We've been reviewing your work on the financial system redesign. It's quite impressive, really. The architecture is sound, the code is clean, and the projected savings are substantial." "Thank you," I replied, feeling a mix of pride and confusion. "But I have to ask, why is an external consulting firm reviewing my work?" James Harrison leaned forward, his expression serious. "Meridian has decided to accelerate the timeline for this project. Given the significant cost savings potential, they want to ensure the implementation goes smoothly and quickly." "That's great," I said, though something about their tone felt off. "I'm confident we can maintain the accelerated timeline. The system is nearly complete, and I've built in safeguards for a smooth transition." "Actually," Marcus interjected, "that's what we need to discuss. Techno Solutions Group has experience with large-scale financial system implementations. They'll be taking over the project from here." The words hit me like a physical blow. Taking over, but this is my project. I designed every aspect of this system. I know it better than anyone. "We understand your attachment to the project," Amanda said with practiced sympathy. "But Meridian needs to ensure business continuity. Having external expertise leading the implementation reduces risk." "Risk?" I felt my voice rising. "The only risk is bringing in people who don't understand the system architecture. I've spent months optimizing every component. You can't just hand this over to someone else." "Sarah," Marcus said firmly, "the decision has been made. You'll spend the next 2 weeks documenting everything and transitioning your work to the Techno Solutions team. After that, you'll be assigned to other projects." I stared at him in disbelief. 2 weeks? They were giving me 2 weeks to hand over 6 months of work to strangers who would probably take credit for everything I'd built. The meeting continued for another 30 minutes, with the consultants asking detailed questions about the system architecture while I answered in a daze. They wanted access to everything: the source code, the database schemas, the integration protocols, the testing procedures, everything I had poured my heart and soul into. After the meeting, I cornered Marcus in the hallway. This is insane, I said, struggling to keep my voice level. You're paying these consultants probably 3 times my salary to implement a system I've already built. How does that make financial sense? Marcus looked around to make sure we weren't being overheard, then stepped closer. Look, Sarah, I know this is frustrating, but this decision came from above my head. Way above. The board wants external validation on major projects like this. External validation? I've been here 6 years. I've never missed a deadline, never had a system failure, never delivered anything less than exceptional work. What more validation do you need? It's not about your track record, he said. And for a moment, his corporate facade slipped, and I saw something that might have been genuine regret. It's about politics. Optics. Sometimes it's easier to sell a project to stakeholders when it has an external firm's name attached to it. I felt something cold and hard settling in my chest. So you're destroying my career for optics? I'm not destroying your career. You're a talented programmer, Sarah. There will be other projects. Will there? Because it seems like every time I build something significant, someone else gets the credit. That was true, and we both knew it. Over the years, I'd seen my innovations attributed to my managers, my solutions presented as team efforts when I'd done the bulk of the work, my designs implemented without my name anywhere in the documentation. Just focus on the transition, Marcus said. Make it smooth, and we'll find you something else to work on. The next 2 weeks were the most humiliating of my professional life. I sat in meeting after meeting with the Techno Solutions consultants, explaining systems I had designed, walking them through code I had written, essentially training my replacements. Amanda Foster and James Harrison were competent enough, but they approached my elegant architecture like mechanics dismantling a watch, functional, but without any understanding of the artistry involved. They asked the right questions and took copious notes, but I could see they were already planning changes. Improvements, they called them. Though anyone with half a brain could see they were just modifications designed to put their own stamp on my work. This integration module is interesting, James said during one of our sessions, studying my code on his laptop. But I think we could optimize it using a more standard framework. It's already optimized, I replied through gritted teeth. That module reduces processing time by 40% compared to standard frameworks. Right, but from a maintenance perspective, it would be easier for other developers to work with if we used more conventional approaches. I wanted to scream. The conventional approaches he was talking about were exactly what I'd improved upon. But I bit my tongue and continued the handover, documenting every detail of my system while watching these strangers prepare to take it apart. The worst part was the team meeting where Marcus announced the transition to the rest of the IT department. He stood at the front of the conference room, PowerPoint slides glowing behind him, and explained how Meridian was bringing in external expertise to ensure the success of this critical project. Sarah has done excellent foundational work, he said. And I noticed he didn't call it excellent work, just foundational work, as if I'd laid some bricks, and now the real builders were coming in. And now Techno Solutions Group will take this to the next level. I watched my colleagues' faces during the presentation. Some looked confused. They knew how much work I'd put into this project. Others looked sympathetic, understanding the corporate dynamics at play. A few looked envious, probably thinking about the consulting fees that could have gone to internal bonuses. After the meeting, my teammate Jake Rodriguez pulled me aside. This is bullshit, Sarah, he said quietly. Everyone knows this is your project. Not anymore, I replied, surprised by how bitter my own voice sounded. What are you going to do? That was the question, wasn't it? What was I going to do? I could complain to HR. But Marcus was right that this decision had come from above his head. I could look for another job, but leaving now would mean abandoning my system to people who didn't understand it. I could accept the situation and hope for better projects in the future. Or I could wait and see what other surprises Meridian had in store for me. The answer came sooner than I expected. It was March 15th, a Tuesday that started like any other. I arrived at the office early, as usual, and spent the morning working on mundane maintenance tasks. The kind of routine programming work that used to be beneath my skill level, but was apparently my new reality. The financial system project was officially in the hands of Techno Solutions Group, though they still occasionally called with questions about implementation details. Around 10 a.m., I got a call from Donna Martinez in HR asking me to come to her office. My first thought was that they had another project for me, maybe something that would let me use my skills more meaningfully. I was wrong. Donna's office was on the 15th floor, in the administrative section of the building. It was a sterile space with motivational posters on the walls and a desk cluttered with personnel files. Donna herself was a middle-aged woman with graying hair and the kind of practiced smile that HR professionals use when they're about to deliver bad news. "Sarah, thank you for coming down," she said, gesturing to a chair across from her desk. "I'm afraid I have some difficult news to share with you." My stomach dropped. In the corporate world, meetings that start with difficult news only go one direction. Due to recent organizational restructuring, Donna continued, reading from a prepared script. "We're eliminating several positions in the IT department. Unfortunately, your position is among those being eliminated." The words seemed to echo in the small office. "You're firing me?" "We prefer to call it a reduction in force," Donna said with that same practiced smile. "This isn't a reflection of your performance. You've been a valued employee for 6 years. It's simply a matter of business needs and budget constraints." Budget constraints? I couldn't keep the incredulity out of my voice. "You're paying consultants 3 times my salary to implement a system I already built, and you're worried about budget constraints?" Donna's smile faltered slightly. "I understand this is frustrating, Sarah, but the decision has been made at the executive level. We're prepared to offer you a generous severance package, 8 weeks of pay plus your accrued vacation time." 8 weeks? They were buying me off with 8 weeks of pay after 6 years of service, after I'd just saved them $2 million annually. "When?" I asked. "Today is your last day. We'll need you to complete the standard exit procedures and return all company property." Today, they were walking me out today, just 3 weeks after taking my project away from me. Can I ask why now? Why not wait until the financial system is fully implemented? Donna consulted her notes, clearly uncomfortable with the question. "The timing is related to the consulting engagement. Having the original developer still on the team could create complications during the transition." And there it was. They weren't just firing me. They were firing me to make sure I couldn't interfere with the consultant's takeover of my work. They wanted me gone before I could point out their mistakes or object to their changes. "I see," I said quietly. "And what about knowledge transfer? I'm the only one who fully understands the system architecture." "The consultants have indicated they have sufficient documentation to proceed." Sufficient documentation? I'd spent 2 weeks explaining every nuance of my system to these people, but there were always details that couldn't be captured in documentation. Elegant solutions that seemed obvious once you understood the underlying logic, but would be mystifying to someone approaching the code cold. Workarounds for vendor limitations that weren't documented anywhere because they were based on tribal knowledge. "I'd like to speak with Marcus about this," I said. "Mr. Blackwood is in meetings all day," Donna replied quickly. "But he wanted me to express his appreciation for your contributions to the company." Of course he was in meetings. He didn't have the courage to face me after orchestrating this betrayal. The next hour was a blur of exit procedures. I had to return my laptop, my access badge, my company phone. I had to sign non-disclosure agreements and non-compete clauses. I had to listen to a security guard explain that he would escort me to my desk to collect my personal belongings and then escort me out of the building. The walk through the IT department was humiliating. My colleagues watched with a mixture of sympathy and fear. Sympathy for what was happening to me, fear that they might be next. Some offered quiet words of support. Others pretended not to see me, probably afraid that associating with me might mark them for the next round of restructuring. I packed my personal items into a cardboard box under the watchful eye of the security guard. My coffee mug, a few tech books, some family photos. A small cactus that had somehow survived 6 years in the artificial environment of a corporate office. 6 years of my life reduced to a box of trinkets. As I cleared out my desk drawers, my hand closed around something that made my heart skip a beat. It was a small USB drive, unmarked and unremarkable, the kind of generic storage device that IT departments hand out by the dozens. But this particular drive contained something special. You see, I'm a paranoid programmer. I've worked in corporate environments long enough to know that companies don't always act in their employees' best interests. So I've always maintained personal backups of my work, not because I planned to steal company property, but because I'd seen too many developers lose months of work to server crashes or corrupted databases. This USB drive contained a complete backup of my financial system project. Not just the final code, but every iteration, every version, every incremental improvement I'd made over the past 6 months. It also contained something else, something I'd built into the system as a failsafe, never imagining I'd actually need to use it. A kill switch. It wasn't anything malicious or destructive. It was simply a backdoor that would allow authorized personnel to perform emergency maintenance on the system remotely. I'd included it because I knew that complex systems sometimes need immediate intervention, and you can't always wait for business hours or formal change approval processes. The kill switch was designed to shut down the financial system gracefully in case of a critical error or security breach. It would preserve all data but prevent any new transactions from being processed until the system could be safely restarted. I'd built it with the best of intentions, thinking it might save the company from a catastrophic system failure someday. I palmed the USB drive and slipped it into my pocket without the security guard noticing. It was my work, after all. My code, my architecture, my months of unpaid overtime and weekend work. If they wanted to fire me and hand my system over to consultants, that was their choice. But they couldn't take away the fact that I was the one who built it. The security guard escorted me to the lobby, where I signed a final logbook and turned in my visitor's badge. As I walked through the glass doors of Meridian Technologies for the last time, I felt a strange sense of calm settling over me. They thought they could use me and discard me. They thought they could take credit for my work and push me aside when it became convenient. They thought they held all the cards. They were wrong. I drove home in a daze, my cardboard box of personal items in the passenger seat of my Honda Civic. My apartment felt strange and empty in the middle of a workday. I'd become so accustomed to the rhythm of office life that being home on a Tuesday afternoon felt surreal. I made myself a cup of coffee and sat down at my personal laptop. The USB drive seemed to burn in my pocket, but I resisted the urge to plug it in immediately. Instead, I spent the afternoon processing what had happened and planning my next move. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. Not just angry, furious. They'd stolen my work, destroyed my career, and humiliated me in front of my colleagues. And for what? So they could pay consultants 10 times what they'd paid me to implement a system I'd already built. I thought about the months of work I'd put into that project. The late nights, the weekends, the times I'd skipped lunch to troubleshoot a problem or optimize a function. I'd treated that system like my child, nurturing it and guiding its development with the kind of care that can't be faked or outsourced. And now it was in the hands of strangers who saw it as just another implementation project. That evening, I finally plugged in the USB drive and opened my backup files. Seeing my code again was like looking at old photographs. Each file brought back memories of the problems I'd solved and the innovations I'd developed. The system was beautiful in its complexity, elegant in its simplicity. I opened the file containing the kill switch code. It was a small module, maybe 50 lines of code, buried deep in the system architecture where only someone who'd built the system would think to look for it. The consultants would never find it, not unless they did a complete code review, which would take weeks. The kill switch had a simple activation protocol. It would monitor for a specific sequence of commands sent to a particular system endpoint. If those commands were received in the correct order within a specified time window, the system would initiate a controlled shutdown. I'd designed it to be fail-safe. It couldn't be triggered accidentally, and it couldn't cause any permanent damage. But it would bring the entire financial system to a halt until someone who understood the architecture could identify and resolve the issue. Someone like me. Over the next few days, I kept in touch with my former colleagues through informal channels. Jake Rodriguez called me regularly with updates on how the system implementation was progressing. The news wasn't good. "They're making changes to everything," Jake told me during one of our calls. "They've ripped out half of your integration modules and replaced them with standard frameworks. The performance is terrible compared to what you had built." "How terrible?" "Processing times are up by 60%. The system keeps throwing errors during high-volume transactions. And don't get me started on the user interface. They've made it so complicated that the accounting department is complaining they can't figure out how to do basic functions." I felt a grim satisfaction hearing this. Of course they were having problems. They'd taken a finely tuned machine and started replacing parts with generic components, like putting bicycle wheels on a Ferrari. "What does Marcus say about the problems?" "He's in damage control mode," Jake replied. "Lots of meetings with the consultants, lots of pressure to get things working properly. Word is the executives are starting to ask questions about why we paid so much money for a system that doesn't work as well as what we had before." "What we had before was a disaster," I pointed out. "That's why I built the new system in the first place." "I know that, and you know that. But apparently the consultants have been telling everyone that the old system just needed some tweaks, not a complete replacement." So they were rewriting history too. Not only had they stolen my work, they were now claiming that my analysis of the old system's problems had been wrong, that my solution had been overkill. "Jake," I said carefully, "hypothetically speaking, how long do you think it would take them to fix the performance issues?" "Honestly, months, maybe longer. They don't understand your architecture well enough to optimize it properly. They're just throwing standard solutions at custom problems." "And the executives are getting impatient?" "Very. There's talk of bringing in another consulting firm to audit the first consulting firm's work." I almost laughed. They were going to pay a second set of consultants to figure out why the first set couldn't make my system work properly. It was corporate dysfunction at its finest. "Sarah," Jake said, his voice dropping to a whisper, "I probably shouldn't be telling you this, but I heard something interesting today. Marcus was on a call with Amanda Foster from Techno Solutions, and he was yelling about contractual obligations and performance guarantees. Apparently, the consulting contract includes penalties if they don't deliver a working system by the end of the month." That was news to me. They'd signed a contract with performance guarantees and hard deadlines, which meant that if the system wasn't working properly by the end of March, Meridian could withhold payment or even terminate the consulting engagement. What happens if they miss the deadline? From what I overheard, Meridian gets their money back and the consultants eat the costs of all the work they've done so far. A plan began forming in my mind. A terrible, wonderful, perfectly justified plan. It was March 28th when I decided to act. Jake had called that morning with an update that made my blood boil. "You're not going to believe this," he said. "They're planning to present the new and improved financial system to the board next week. Marcus has been telling everyone that it's performing even better than originally projected." "But you just told me it's having performance problems." "It is, but apparently they're going to show a demo using test data in a controlled environment. The real system is still having issues, but the demo will make it look perfect." So they were going to lie to the board. They were going to present my broken system as if it were their success story. And Marcus would probably get a promotion for successfully managing the consulting engagement. "Jake, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. Do you think what they did to me was right?" There was a long pause. "No," he said finally. "It was bullshit. You built something amazing, and they screwed you over. And do you think the consultants deserve to get paid for breaking my system?" Another pause. "No, they've made everything worse." "Then I'm going to do something about it." "Sarah, what are you planning? You're not thinking of doing something stupid, are you?" "Define stupid." "Anything that could get you arrested or sued." I thought about that. What I was planning wouldn't get me arrested. I wasn't going to steal anything or destroy anything. I was simply going to use a feature I'd built into my own system for exactly this kind of situation. "I'm not going to do anything illegal," I said truthfully. but I'm going to make sure the right people get credit for the right work. Sarah. Jake, can you tell me when they're planning to run the board presentation? The actual day and time? I think it's scheduled for Tuesday morning, March 31st at 10 a.m. Perfect. The last day of March, which was also the deadline for the consulting contract. That weekend, I prepared meticulously. I researched the legal implications of what I was planning, consulted the employment contract I'd signed when I started at Meridian, and reviewed the intellectual property policies that governed my work. The kill switch I'd built was a legitimate system feature, documented in the technical specifications I'd provided during the handover. It wasn't a virus or malware, it was an emergency shutdown procedure that I'd designed to protect the system from catastrophic failures. The fact that the consultants hadn't discovered it during their code review was their oversight, not my deception. On Monday morning, March 30th, I received a call that almost made me change my mind. Sarah, it's Marcus. I know this is awkward, but I wanted to call you personally. I was surprised to hear from him. What can I do for you, Marcus? Look, I'm going to be straight with you. We're having some issues with the financial system implementation. The consultants are struggling with some of the more complex aspects of your architecture. I'm sorry to hear that, I said, not sorry at all. The thing is, we have the board presentation tomorrow, and we really need the system to be running smoothly. I was wondering if you might be willing to come in as a contractor for a day or two, just to help troubleshoot the issues. I almost dropped the phone. After firing me for budget reasons, after giving my project to consultants, after walking me out of the building like a security threat, he wanted me to come back and fix their problems. Let me make sure I understand, I said slowly. You fired me 3 weeks ago, and now you want me to come back and fix the system that the consultants you hired to replace me have broken? It's not broken, exactly. It's just not performing as well as we'd hoped. And what would you pay me for this contract work? We were thinking your standard hourly rate. My standard hourly rate was when I was a full-time employee with benefits. Contract rates are typically 3 to 4 times higher. There was a pause. We might be able to accommodate something in that range for a very short engagement. I pretended to consider it. Marcus, I appreciate the offer, but I've already moved on. I'm pursuing other opportunities. Sarah, please. I know we didn't handle your departure well, but this is really important. The board is expecting to see a functioning system tomorrow. Then I suggest you call Techno Solutions Group. They're the experts you hired to handle this project. We have called them. They need more time. How much more time? Potentially several more weeks, which would put them well past the contract deadline, I realized. If they couldn't demonstrate a working system by tomorrow, Meridian could terminate the consulting contract and recover their costs. I'm sorry, Marcus, but I can't help you. Good luck with the presentation. I hung up feeling a mixture of satisfaction and nervousness. They were desperate enough to call me back, which meant the situation was even worse than Jake had described. It also meant that what I was planning would have maximum impact. Tuesday morning dawned gray and overcast, matching my mood perfectly. I sat in my apartment with my laptop open, the kill switch code displayed on the screen like a loaded weapon. At 9:45 a.m., I called Jake. How are things looking for the presentation? I asked. Tense, he replied in a whisper. The entire executive team is here, plus the board members. Marcus and the consultants are in the conference room setting up the demo. And the system? Still having performance issues, but they're going to try to power through it. They've scripted the entire demo to avoid the problem areas. Jake, I need you to do me a favor. In about 10 minutes, I want you to go to your computer and pull up the system monitoring dashboard. Why? Just trust me. And Jake, when you see what happens, I want you to remember that this system was built with emergency safeguards for exactly this kind of situation. Sarah, what are you about to do? I'm about to show everyone what happens when you try to take credit for work you don't understand. At exactly 10 a.m., I initiated the kill switch sequence. It took 17 seconds. The first command established a connection to the system's maintenance interface. The second command verified my authorization codes, the same codes I'd used for 6 years as the system administrator. The third command initiated the emergency shutdown protocol. I could picture what was happening in that conference room. Marcus would be in the middle of his presentation, probably talking about the innovative features of the new system. The consultants would be standing beside the projection screen, ready to demonstrate the user interface they'd improved. And then, suddenly, the system would go dark. Not a crash, not an error message. Just a clean, professional shutdown with a message that would appear on every terminal. System temporarily unavailable for emergency maintenance. Please contact system administrator for assistance. My phone rang 30 seconds later. Sarah. It was Jake, his voice a mixture of panic and amazement. What did you do? The entire financial system just went down. Did it crash? I asked innocently. No, it's showing some kind of maintenance message, but it happened right in the middle of the board presentation. Marcus looks like he's about to have a heart attack. That's unfortunate timing. Sarah, they're going to know you did this. How? I'm not even employed there anymore. I don't have access to any of their systems. Which was technically true. I wasn't using my old employee access. I was using the emergency maintenance protocols I'd built into the system itself. Protocols that were documented in the technical specifications, available to anyone who bothered to read them thoroughly. Can you fix it? Jake asked. I could, I said carefully. If I were asked nicely, and if certain conditions were met. Over the next hour, my phone rang 6 times. First Jake, then David Kim from Database Administration, then Janet Walsh from Project Management. Each caller more frantic than the last, each asking if I knew what might have caused the system failure. I played dumb. System failures happened all the time in complex environments. Could be a network issue, could be a database problem, could be a bug in the code that the consultants had modified. The 7th call came from Marcus himself. Sarah, I don't know what's happening, but the entire financial system is down. The board presentation is a disaster. The consultants are saying they've never seen anything like this. That's terrible, I said with fake sympathy. Have they tried the standard troubleshooting procedures? They've tried everything. The system seems to be in some kind of maintenance mode, but nobody knows how to get it out of that state. That does sound unusual. What do the system logs show? They're looking at the logs now, but they can't find any errors or warnings. It's like the system just decided to shut itself down. Well, I said thoughtfully, complex systems sometimes have built-in safeguards that activate under certain conditions. Maybe something triggered an automatic maintenance routine. Is there anything you can think of that might cause that? Without seeing the system directly, it's hard to say. But if I had to guess, I'd say someone should check the emergency maintenance protocols. I seem to remember building some fail-safes into the architecture. Emergency maintenance protocols? Yes, they're documented in the technical specifications I provided during the handover. Section 12.4, I believe. Any competent systems administrator should be able to find them. There was a long pause. Sarah, I need to ask you directly. Did you have anything to do with this system failure? Marcus, I was fired 3 weeks ago and escorted out of the building by security. How could I possibly have access to your systems? I don't know, but the timing seems awfully convenient. Convenient for whom? This certainly isn't convenient for me. I'm sitting at home, unemployed, watching my former colleagues deal with the system crisis. If anything, this proves that you probably shouldn't have fired the person who built the system. Another long pause. What would it take to get you to come in and help us fix this? And there it was, the question I'd been waiting for. Well, I said slowly, that would depend on several factors. Such as, first, I'd need a formal apology from the company for my wrongful termination. Second, I'd need my job back, with a promotion to reflect my actual contributions to the organization. Third, I'd need the consulting contract with Techno Solutions Group to be terminated, and I'd need to be put back in charge of the financial system project. Sarah, those are significant demands. Marcus, let me explain something to you. I built that system from the ground up. Every line of code, every integration, every optimization. The consultants you hired have spent 3 weeks trying to understand what I created in 6 months, and they failed. Now you have a system that doesn't work, a board that's questioning your judgment, and a contract deadline that you're about to miss. How do you know about the contract deadline? I know because I understand how these things work. You signed a contract with performance guarantees, and if you can't deliver a working system by today, you're in breach. Which means Techno Solutions Group gets to keep all the money you've paid them so far. And you still don't have a working system. I could hear muffled voices in the background, other people talking urgently about the crisis. Sarah, I need to discuss this with the executive team. Can you give me 30 minutes? Of course. But Marcus, every minute that system is down costs the company money. Payroll can't be processed, expense reports can't be approved. Budget allocations are frozen. I'd estimate the cost at about $50,000 per hour in lost productivity and delayed transactions. That was probably an exaggeration, but not by much. The financial system was the backbone of Meridian's operations. When it went down, everything else ground to a halt. 30 minutes later, my phone rang again. Sarah, it's Marcus. I've spoken with the executive team and the board. We're prepared to discuss your terms. All of them? Most of them. We can offer you your job back with a significant raise and a promotion to senior systems architect. We can issue a formal statement acknowledging that your termination was a mistake. And the consulting contract? That's more complicated. We can't terminate the contract without cause. You have cause. They failed to deliver a working system by the contracted deadline. But the system was working until this morning. Was it? According to my sources, the system has been having performance issues for weeks. The consultants haven't been able to resolve the problems with the architecture they modified. This morning's failure is just the final straw. Sarah, we need that system back online. People are depending on it. I know they are. And I want to help. But I need to know that Meridian is committed to doing the right thing here. What do you want? I want to be reinstated as the lead developer on the financial system project. I want the consultants removed from any technical decision-making roles. And I want a guarantee that this kind of situation won't happen again. You want us to fire the consultants? I want you to recognize that they've failed to deliver what they promised. They've taken my system and made it worse. They've cost the company time and money. And now they can't fix the problems they've created. There was another pause filled with background conversations. If we agree to your terms, Marcus said finally, how quickly can you get the system back online? I can have it running within an hour of arriving at the office. An hour? The consultants have been working on this all morning. The consultants don't understand the system architecture. I do. And you're certain you can fix it? Marcus, I built it. Of course I can fix it. Another pause. Okay. We'll send a car to pick you up. Can you be ready in 15 minutes? I'll be waiting. The car ride back to Meridian Technologies was surreal. 3 weeks earlier, I'd been escorted out of this same building in disgrace. Now I was being chauffeured back like a conquering hero. The lobby was buzzing with activity when I arrived. Employees stood in small groups, whispering about the system failure and what it might mean for the company. Some recognized me and looked surprised to see me back. Others seemed confused about why an unemployed former employee was walking through their workplace. I took the elevator to the 20th floor, where the IT department was in full crisis mode. People were hunched over their computers, frantically trying to diagnose the system failure. Others were on phones with vendors and support teams. The atmosphere was tense and desperate. Marcus met me at the elevator. Sarah, thank God you're here. The situation is getting worse by the minute. How much worse? The payroll system is completely down. We've got 300 employees who were supposed to be paid today, and we can't process any of the transactions. The accounting department is in chaos because they can't access any of the financial records. And the board is demanding answers. Where are the consultants? In conference room A, trying to figure out what went wrong. And they still haven't found the maintenance protocols? They claim they've reviewed all the documentation, but they can't find anything that explains what happened. Of course they couldn't. The maintenance protocols were buried deep in the technical specifications, in a section that most people would skip over because it dealt with emergency procedures that were never supposed to be used. Marcus, I need you to make a decision right now. Are you putting me back in charge of this system, or are you going to keep letting the consultants fumble around while the company bleeds money? He looked toward conference room A, where I could see Amanda Foster and James Harrison bent over their laptops, looking frustrated and defeated. You're in charge, he said. What do you need? I need my old workstation back, and I need everyone to stay out of my way for the next hour. My desk had been reassigned to a junior developer, but it took only a few minutes to clear it out and get me logged in. As I settled into my familiar chair and fired up my workstation, I felt a sense of rightness that I hadn't experienced in weeks. Opening the system administration console felt like coming home. The kill switch had done exactly what it was designed to do. The system had shut down gracefully, preserving all data and maintaining the integrity of the database. All I had to do was enter the restart sequence, and everything would come back online. But I took my time. I ran diagnostic checks, reviewed the system logs, and verified that all the components were functioning properly. I wanted to be absolutely certain that when I brought the system back up, it would run flawlessly. While I worked, word spread through the office that I was back and working on the system failure. My former colleagues stopped by to welcome me back and express their relief that someone who understood the system was finally working on the problem. Sarah, Jake said, leaning over my cubicle wall, I can't believe you're back. This is incredible. It's temporary, I replied, not looking up from my screen. At least until we get this mess sorted out. But you're getting your job back, right? That's what everyone's saying. We'll see. Right now, I'm just focused on getting the system running again. After 45 minutes of careful diagnostics and preparation, I initiated the restart sequence. The system came back online smoothly, all services resuming normal operation as if nothing had happened. Within minutes, the payroll system was processing transactions again. The accounting department regained access to their financial records. The crisis was over. I sent a message to Marcus. System restored. All services operational. 5 minutes later, he appeared at my desk with a crowd of executives in tow, including several people I didn't recognize who were probably board members. Sarah, Marcus said, I'd like you to meet the executive team. This is Sarah Mitchell, the developer who built our financial system and just restored it to full operation. One of the board members, a distinguished-looking woman in her 60s, stepped forward. Ms. Mitchell, I'm Patricia Hendricks, chairman of the board. I understand you're the person responsible for both creating this system and fixing today's crisis. That's correct, I replied, standing up to shake her hand. And I also understand that you were terminated from your position just 3 weeks ago? Yes, ma'am. Can you explain to me how that makes any sense? I glanced at Marcus, who looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. I'm afraid you'd have to ask Mr. Blackwood about the reasoning behind that decision, I said diplomatically. Patricia Hendricks turned to Marcus with a look that could have frozen fire. Mr. Blackwood, I think you and I need to have a conversation. But first, I'd like to understand what happened here today. Ms. Mitchell, can you explain what caused the system failure? The system didn't fail, I said carefully. It executed an emergency maintenance protocol that I built into the architecture as a safeguard against certain types of problems. What kind of problems? Primarily issues related to unauthorized modifications to the core system architecture. The protocol is designed to prevent potential data corruption or security breaches when the system detects that its integrity has been compromised. And what triggered this protocol today? I looked around at the faces watching me expectantly. The consultants had appeared from their conference room and were listening from the edge of the group. The system has been monitoring its own performance since the consulting team began making modifications. I explained, when performance degradation reached a critical threshold, the emergency protocol activated automatically. Performance degradation caused by our modifications? Amanda Foster interrupted, her face flushing red. The system logs show a 60% increase in processing time and a significant rise in error rates over the past 3 weeks. I replied matter-of-factly, "Those are the metrics that triggered the emergency protocol." "But we were told the system was working properly," Patricia Hendricks said, her voice getting colder. "The system was functional," James Harrison said quickly. "We were just making some optimizations. Optimizations that made the system slower and less reliable." I said, "The emergency protocol was designed to prevent exactly this kind of situation." Patricia Hendricks looked at the consultants with obvious displeasure. "Let me make sure I understand this correctly. We paid your firm to improve a system that was already working. Instead, you made it worse. And then the system's own safeguards shut it down to prevent further damage." "That's an oversimplification," Amanda Foster began. "Is it accurate?" Patricia Hendricks demanded. The consultants exchanged glances, realizing they were trapped. "There may have been some performance issues," James Harrison admitted reluctantly. "But we were confident we could resolve them." "How confident? Confident enough to bet your contract on it?" "Ma'am, your contract specified that you would deliver a fully functional system by today's deadline. It's now past that deadline, and your system was non-functional until Ms. Mitchell fixed it. That sounds like a breach of contract to me." I watched with satisfaction as the consultants realized their situation was hopeless. They'd been caught in their own incompetence, and there was no way to spin their way out of it. "Ms. Mitchell," Patricia Hendricks continued, "I owe you an apology on behalf of Meridian Technologies. Your termination was clearly a mistake, and I want to personally ensure that this situation is resolved fairly." "Thank you," I said. "I appreciate that. What would it take to bring you back permanently?" Before I could answer, Marcus stepped forward. "We've already discussed terms with Sarah," he said quickly. "She's agreed to return as senior systems architect with a significant salary increase." "Senior systems architect?" Patricia Hendricks looked skeptical. "Given what I've seen today, I think we can do better than that." She turned back to me. "Ms. Mitchell, how would you feel about the position of Chief Technology Officer?" The question hit me like a lightning bolt. CTO, that was Marcus's job. That's very generous," I stammered. "But I'm not sure." "I am," Patricia Hendricks said firmly. "You've demonstrated that you understand our systems better than anyone else in this company. You built something that saves us millions of dollars annually. And when we made the mistake of pushing you aside, you were professional enough to come back and fix the crisis we created." She looked directly at Marcus, who had gone pale. "Mr. Blackwood, I think it's time for you to consider other opportunities. Your judgment in this matter has been severely lacking." The room fell silent. I could hear the hum of computers and the distant sound of phones ringing, but nobody spoke for what felt like an eternity. "Ms. Mitchell," Patricia Hendricks said finally, "what do you say? Are you interested in leading our technology organization?" I looked around the room at the faces watching me. My former colleagues looked amazed and hopeful. The consultants looked defeated and angry. Marcus looked like a man who'd just realized his career was over. "I accept," I said. The next few hours were a blur of paperwork, meetings, and transition planning. The consulting contract with Techno Solutions Group was terminated for cause, saving Meridian the remainder of their fees. Amanda Foster and James Harrison packed up their materials and left the building without ceremony, their reputation in tatters. Marcus cleaned out his office that same afternoon. He didn't say goodbye to me, which was probably for the best. I felt some sympathy for him. He'd made a bad decision and paid the ultimate price for it, but I couldn't forget how he'd betrayed me. As the new CTO, my first priority was stabilizing the financial system and undoing the damage the consultants had caused. It took me 3 days to restore the system to its original performance levels, removing the optimizations that had made everything slower and less reliable. My second priority was rebuilding trust with my new team. Many of the IT staff had been demoralized by the chaos of the past few weeks, and they needed to see that we were going to operate differently going forward. I want everyone to understand something. I told the assembled IT staff during my first team meeting as CTO. What happened here was a failure of leadership, not a failure of technical skill. You're all talented professionals, and I'm honored to work with you. Jake Rodriguez raised his hand. Sarah, what's going to happen to projects that were already in progress? Are we going to see more consulting firms brought in? No, I said firmly. We're going to develop our capabilities internally. We're going to invest in training, in better tools, and in creating an environment where good work is recognized and rewarded. And what about the financial system? Asked David Kim. Are we going to continue developing it? Absolutely. But we're going to do it right this time, with proper testing, proper documentation, and proper respect for the people doing the work. Over the following weeks, the story of what had happened at Meridian began to spread through the local tech community. It became a cautionary tale about the dangers of corporate politics and the importance of recognizing talent when you have it. I received calls from several other companies trying to recruit me away from Meridian, but I turned them all down. I had work to do here, and I wasn't going to abandon the system I'd built or the team I was now leading. The financial system project was completed 6 months later, exactly as I'd originally planned it. The final implementation saved Meridian $2.3 million annually, slightly more than my original projections. The system ran flawlessly, with zero downtime and performance metrics that exceeded all expectations. At the company's annual meeting, Patricia Hendricks presented the financial results to the shareholders. She made a point of recognizing my contributions and the lessons the company had learned from the crisis. Last year, we nearly made a catastrophic mistake, she said. We almost threw away one of our most valuable assets, not a piece of equipment or a patent, but a person whose skills and dedication had already saved us millions of dollars. She paused and looked directly at me, sitting in the front row of the auditorium. Sarah Mitchell didn't just build us a better computer system, she taught us a better way to value our employees and their contributions. The lesson we learned is simple. When you have exceptional talent, you nurture it, you reward it, and you never, ever take it for granted. The applause was thunderous. But what meant the most to me were the faces of my team members, beaming with pride at the recognition their work was finally receiving. After the meeting, Jake cornered me in the hallway. Sarah, can I ask you something? Of course. That day when the system went down, did you really trigger the emergency protocol? Or was it just an incredible coincidence? I looked at him for a long moment, then smiled. Jake, that system has dozens of automated safeguards and protocols. Sometimes they activate in ways that even surprise the person who built them. That's not really an answer. It's the only answer you're going to get. He laughed and shook his head. You know, I always suspected you were more devious than you let on. I prefer to think of it as thorough planning. As I walked back to my office, the corner office that had once belonged to Marcus, I reflected on everything that had happened. 6 months earlier, I'd been a frustrated programmer watching my work get handed over to consultants. Now I was the CTO of a major corporation, leading a team of talented professionals and building systems that would serve the company for years to come. The revenge had been sweet, but the redemption was even sweeter. People often ask me if I regret what I did that day. If I feel guilty about triggering the system shutdown that caused so much chaos and ultimately destroyed several careers. The answer is no. I didn't set out to hurt anyone. I set out to protect something I'd built, to ensure that the people responsible for damaging it would face consequences for their actions. The system shutdown was a natural result of poor decision-making and incompetent management, not a malicious attack. Besides, in the end, everyone got what they deserved. The consultants who promised more than they could deliver faced the consequences of their failure. The manager who betrayed his own employee learned that loyalty is a two-way street, and the programmer who built something valuable finally got the recognition she'd earned. Sometimes the best revenge is simply letting people face the natural consequences of their own choices. The financial system I built is still running today, 3 years later. It's been enhanced and improved, but the core architecture remains unchanged. Every time I see those performance metrics on my dashboard, Every time I hear about another process that's been streamlined or another cost that's been reduced, I'm reminded of what we can accomplish when we trust the right people to do the right work. And every time a new employee joins our team, I make sure they understand the most important lesson I learned from this experience. Your work is your legacy. Build it well, protect it fiercely, and never let anyone convince you that you're not worth what you've created. Because sometimes 17 seconds is all it takes to change everything.